And we are live on YouTube, and we will soon be live on Facebook.
Okay, terrific. Then why don't we, at 7 o'clock, why don't we get started? We have a good crowd, and I think more will come. So let me introduce everyone and get us started. There's a lot to discuss. My name is Stephen Blank. I'm the editor and publisher of Blank Slate Media, and I'd like to welcome everyone to our town hall on saving our downtown. This evening's discussion is sponsored by Northwell Health and the Nassau County Local Economic Assistance Corporation. We thank them for their support. We're going to begin with a discussion among panel members and allow attendees to ask questions through the chat area phone. In some cases, if there's something more extended, we may ask them to, we may promote somebody to panelists and let them more address our attendees. So let me start by introducing our distinguished panel, beginning with Richie Kessel, the chairman of the Nassau County IDA and the Nassau County Local Economic Assistance Corporation. Eric Alexander, the director of Vision Long Island. Anthony Bartone, the managing partner of Terwilliger and Properties. Ralph Ekstrand, the mayor of Farmingdale, who has been credited with leading a successful revitalization of his village's downtown. And Dennis Grossman, president of the Nassau Council of Chambers of Commerce and the Great Neck Chamber of Commerce, who in his spare time runs a consulting business and serves on a Village of Great Neck board, among other things. Let me start by saying downtowns have long served as centers for our communities, but in recent years, many have suffered from the competition of malls, the internet, and other ills. Some areas include many boarded storefronts, and that was before COVID-19. So here we are, we're now coming out of COVID, and I'd like to get a feeling of where we are right now. So Eric, your group is involved in development throughout the island, Long Island. Where are we right now in terms of the health of downtowns?
Thanks, Stephen. Thanks for having me on. And yeah, I mean, where are we now? I mean, I think we just have to take a second and go back 13 months, 14 months. January 2020, we had our Long Island Main Street Alliance meeting. We had over 100 folks there, 20 downtowns presented, a very robust growth year for 2020. Right before the pandemic, it was like we were going to have an out of the park year. And, you know, the pandemic hit. And it wasn't even that we lost market. You know, we really were regulated. The pain was government regulation. So that was the primary challenge, and it still is to this day. With that said, downtowns have fared better than out of town as far as vacancies, largely because folks still gathered downtown, whether the stores were regulated to be open or not. Folks were walking, biking, out for health, out for socialization, what have you. So, and we're still seeing development projects under multifamily and transit-oriented development come through the planning process. Things were slowed down because towns and villages, some towns were not as open to process applications. But we did not lose, you know, kind of the economic viability of our downtown growth. So we're looking forward to things getting back to some kind of normal, but that's going to rely on government regulations, easing a bit, particularly on restaurants and bars, number one. Number two, government money that's coming down the pike. Some government agencies, I may, depending on how this goes, I may mention who they are later, have been pretty awful in outreaching to getting resources directly to the businesses. And quite frankly, if we don't do a better job getting those dollars to real people, the region loses it. It's use it or lose it. It's like found money. So I'll end with that point, because those are kind of the variables. If aid's coming, it should go to the people that need it. And some of that didn't happen.
So we'll move on to Dennis and then Richard. Dennis, you are the president of all the chambers. So you have a good connection with what's taking place in the downtowns across Nassau County. Where do you see it right now? What are you hearing? What's the feedback at the Chamber of Commerce meetings?
I'm president of the Council of Chambers, not the chambers. And what I'm seeing in chambers is very different things in different areas. A lot depends upon the demographics. I see a lot of pent-up demand in a lot of areas. I see new businesses coming in to stores that were vacant. I think there's a lot of pent-up financial availability out there. And Eric is 100% right. The money has to get to the right places in order for that to become viable.
Where's the bottleneck with that, Dennis? Who should be doing this? Who should be managing this?
Well, the one that does the best job, I'm not painting him as Richie, and you need a central source, and you need some place in government and that's not spread out through the entire network of government. The IDA seems to have done a very focused job on getting things to the right places and knowing the right people, because Richie's been here for a long time, doing a lot of different things, knows all the areas, knows the people, and knows the needs.
All right. So, Richie, where do you see things? I think we got to unmute you.
No, I'm unmuted, I think.
Okay. All right.
First of all, Steve, I just want to thank you for holding the forum and your dedication to downtowns. I remember when we first met a few years ago, one of the things you talked about at our breakfast I remember we had was the importance of downtowns. And when Laura Curran, county executive, asked me to head the IDA, she said that, we want to take a look not just at the big projects, the Amazons, the super block, the transit-oriented development. We've got to help downtowns. And I think, we've made some very good strides, but we have to do a lot more. And, I have to say that, the county executive's leadership here has been very helpful in doing a number of things for downtowns. I know that during COVID last year, as an example, she came up with the idea of giving out PPE at a time when you couldn't get it and it was too expensive. And as a result, between the county, the town of Hempstead, and the IDA and LEAK, which is really the same thing, we wound up giving out over 5,000 PPE kits to businesses in the downtowns throughout the county. And that was critically important at the time. Timing is very important. I think one of the issues that's going to be important as we go into this recovery funding that we're going to be getting is communicating, to people and to business people how they can take advantage of things that the county, the IDA does. Eric, and I'm on the Vision Long Island board for many years. Eric's done a great job, but we've got to be able to communicate. I'll give you an example. And I think this was a terrific idea, and I credit Laura Curran with it, is she started a grant program for restaurants in downtowns. And I got to tell you, restaurants are suffering. One of the IDA board members, my good friend John Kamatis, owns a restaurant in Bethpage, Sweeney's, great place. And he found it so difficult and challenging. He had to close for a while. He had to do takeout. he was able to access a grant from the county to help him pay his employees. Here's the thing, though, to point out. He's educated. He's on the IDA board. He knows what's going on. There are still tens of thousands of dollars left that are begging to go to restaurants, and the restaurants don't even know about it. I have a good friend who owns a local Chinese restaurant. When I mentioned it to him, he'd never heard of it before. And so as important as all these programs are, whether it's PPE, whether it's, the Boost Nassau program that we did in conjunction with the county, telling people to shop local, we've got to do a better job of communicating with the small businesses in the downtowns that we're here to help you. Yes, if you're a restaurant, you can get a $5,000 or a $10,000 grant. There shouldn't be any money left in many of these programs, yet there are. So, and one other thing I want to say, I don't want to take up too much time, is the ability to communicate through social media is so critical. I've heard from a number of people, and Dennis Grossman, who's on the Zoom, has done just a great job with the Council of Chambers of Commerce. And we talked about social media, but I've heard from a lot of chamber members, local chambers, that they don't know how to use social media. They don't have the time to do it. They get in the morning, they got to get everything ready. They're not really sure how to do it. And I think one of the things that we need to do, and we're working on with the county executive and others, are programs to train some of the local businesses as to how to use social media, not just to promote their business and to tell people that they're safe, but also to get information for themselves about what programs are available. I mean, Eric does a great job. He puts out bulletins almost daily. I read them all the time. But, and I'm not a social media person. No, everyone that works with me knows I'm not great at it. But we've got to be able to help these small businesses reach out to their customers, tell them that our business is safe. Here's the things that we've done. And we use PPE. Don't afraid to come in. Shop safe. Shop local. And I think one of the things I think we need to use some of the recovery funding for is to train small businesses in downtowns how to use and how to interpret social media. Communication is key.
Anthony, let me ask you this. In terms of what the future of downtowns are going to be, in terms of, there was a number of issues that I've heard from people who are developers who want to do business, and they find many areas, at least particularly where our newspapers are situated in the town of North Hempstead, to be difficult areas to work, to develop, and that things aren't zoned correctly. You have to go through that issue. What would you want? What are you looking for somebody to go in, for a place to be attractive for you to go in and do a development?
Well, we certainly look to business-friendly environments, and the Village of Farmingdale, of course, epitomizes that. But you look at, and Eric and I discuss this all the time, you look at when you have hyper-local government and the residents there, villages typically are the places where it's most successful and easiest to get done. And I like to say this all the time, and it's resonated over and over again, the 90-10 rule. 90% of Long Island, we don't want to really mess with too much. It's that 10% that we want to focus on. And typically that's in the downtowns or it's around the train stations. Because remember, back in the 50s, 60s, everybody wanted to get as far away as they could from the train. So typically you'd find warehouses or other uses, industrial uses in those areas. Now we've gone full circle, and now the next generation wants to be near the train for ease of access to mass transit, commuting, wants to be able to walk to the downtown, not have to have an automobile. And believe it or not, Steve, this is a concept that many Long Islanders find foreign, but people who live in transit-oriented developments in the downtowns, there are people who actually don't have cars here on Long Island. Imagine that. And if they do, maybe they have one for two people or whatever it is, because we encourage the mass transit use of walking into downtown. I myself live in the village of Farmingdale on the periphery of the village, and I walk into the village. I can't imagine not having that that benefit, so I don't have to worry about driving or not. So that was a long-winded answer, but as a developer, we look to communities who are looking to embrace business. Development is not an evil word. Smart growth is just what it says, smart. And so people have to embrace that. And you were talking about, you know, how, which is the whole crux of this panel, how do we save our downtowns? Well, guys, look no further than the thriving downtowns. What you have to do is put boots on the ground. Retail will follow rooftops. We have to put people in the downtown. Amazon's here, people are going to shop online, but they're always going to get out on a nice day and walk. If right next door to them is a restaurant or whatever it is, they're going to go out and they're going to frequent that local business. Now, I've also heard, well, we have lots of restaurants, but not a lot of retailers. Well, guess what? Once we start bringing the people back in and there's that vibrancy, other retail uses will follow. Again, I point to Farmingdale. We have Runner's Edge. It's kind of a destination shop for sneakers and running apparel. That's a retail use. You'll see other retail uses follow when the traffic is there.
As somebody who is willing to invest money and build in a place, what are the things that'll be red flags to you when you're looking at something and saying this is going to be too difficult, it's going to be more expensive because of what? What is that thing that it's going to, that might scare you off or deter you from doing a project that you might otherwise do?
Yeah, well, the development community hears messages loud and clear. So there's certain townships that'll remain nameless. When you hear application come in over and over again and those applications fail over and over again, that message is heard loud and clear in the development community. Now, on a typical transit-oriented development project, the developer will have to deploy upwards of $1 million of their own capital before they could even get any bank financing or anything else. It's a massive, massive investment. And then capital is rallied on national stage. And everybody has to remember that it's tough here on Long Island. Taxes are tough. Land is tough. A lot of things are expensive here. And the capital that's rallied for these projects could deploy that capital anywhere in the nation. They don't have to come here. We try to attract them to Long Island and try and draw them in. So we look at communities that are being proactive, that are doing master planning processes, that are don't even make sense anymore. We're looking to those communities that are being proactive, that are embracing these concepts, and that's where we look to go. You know, a quick example, a township that'll remain nameless, vacant building at the train station, not flanked by industrial uses. We said, oh, this is a great opportunity. We met with the local legislator, and the conversation lasted all of about 6 seconds. He said, no, we're not ever going to have apartments in our area. That's all there is to it. That closed-minded type of reaction sends a message loud and clear. So we look to communities that are embracing smart growth principles, recodifying zoning laws that made sense in the 50s don't anymore, and what are
some of those laws? How should the law change?
Well, you got to. So back in the 50s, the laws were such that we were an auto-dependent community. Here's a quick example. Retail back in the 50s used to want a very long, deep store. So they had the back room area, they had all this. It was typically 50, 60, 70 feet deep. Retail today wants storefront and not much depth because of the online presence. So they only want 20, 30 feet deep. So and mixed use, the ability to develop multifamily. A lot of the laws here in municipalities on Long Island are void of allowing that at all. It doesn't even exist within the code. So the codes have to evolve to meet the needs of the time. And when you see areas, like I said, it's typically a little, in my opinion, easier for villages to do it when you have a small local government. A little bit more of a bigger action when you have a bigger township. But the laws have to evolve to match the need of the time.
Mayor Exton, you have presided over a revitalization of a downtown that had been really fallen down, empty storefronts, business not strong. How'd you do it?
Transit-oriented development, to quote Anthony, the rooftops will bring retail. Nobody was looking at Farmingdale before we had transit-oriented development. And I have to look over here at Eric, who has been a good friend for 15 years. Eric was at the beginning of helping us do transit-oriented development. We started, speaking of warehouses, we started our first project was the old, if you remember, Hills Brothers Supermarkets, was the Hills Brothers warehouse, which was vacant and decaying right across the street from our train station. And thanks to Anthony, it is now 154 mixed-use unit of probably 28,000 square feet of retail and 154 apartments. Since then, I've had 8 such developments in Farmingdale. It sort of snowballs. Once you have success with one transit-oriented development project, others follow. And again, hats off to my good friend Richard down there. I think for a medium-sized village, I have more pilots than anybody else, I think. I just have another pilot coming in. We have our first 100% 71-unit workforce housing development in our village to keep the youth on Long Island. Once you bring these apartments to our downtown, the people naturally shop. It's just human nature. They walk from the train station, they pass all the shops to get to the house. And you know what? After a long day on the subway, the last thing you want to do is cook. You want to eat in our restaurants. And if you've seen my COVID-19 pounds I've gained during COVID, you'll realize the mayor tends to eat in our downtown also.
Okay, Eric, let me ask you, and I'd like to, we actually have somebody from another group who's doing sort of a very interesting thing. It's sort of a resident-driven effort for development in Great Neck. So I'm going to invite her on, but her name is Michelle Tabaraki, and she is with the Destination Great Neck. And this is a group that just took it upon itself because Great Neck, and I'll discuss that a little bit, has had problems that are a little bit different. They don't have a Mayor Exton who's able to oversee all this. Instead, there's 9 villages in Great Neck, and it's kind of Game of Thrones at time along Middle Neck Road. But let me ask you, Eric, in terms of what's going on now with office building, and now this new, what is the impact now of the fact of what's happened during the pandemic to people working, not going into the office? In Manhattan right now, there's something like 15% occupancy of office buildings, and you have many businesses, large corporations, Chase Bank, that are downsizing and will never go back to being that size again. Does that help a place in suburban areas where many of the people who work in downtowns are staying home, or does it not have an impact?
Well, so 3 things. One, we did a survey from March till November of our Main Street, and it starts with the retail, but this relates. So of how many retail stores went out, and we found that it's an average of about 3 per downtown. So it's very low. So you ask why? Because we did have the exodus from the city. We also had a lot of people doing shopping local, doing local trips. So that helped the retail and helped maintain kind of a support of our Main Street business districts in general. The office space within our Main Street business districts has been at a lower vacancy rate than office office parks per se on 110 or other areas of the island that are designated office parks. So the smaller localized business services that are in our office buildings on our main streets have, are relatively full. But yeah, there's no doubt people are working from home, but the exodus from the city has helped us. It has brought feet on the street. And then there's some uniqueness, the third point, there are some unique models that have been emerging between the U Office folks and it's similar to the WeWork, the U Office Regis and Work Smart is the other one. And there's 3 or 4 of them on the island that have these kind of office share dynamics. And you're seeing companies create, some sort of space. They were in Manhattan, but they're going to have a satellite office out here. So we definitely know that office is, the changing nature of office is a component out here, and it's not going to be your father or grandfather's office space where you go to the office park and you park yourself and you maybe go out, you drive to lunch somewhere and office is going to be incorporated in the downtown fabric. And again, we're more bullish. I know the title of this is Saving Downtowns, but we are more bullish that downtowns are in better shape than other areas of the island. So I want to be real clear about that.
Okay. All right. Let me, I'll preface this, and I want to ask Dennis, who is the president, in addition to the president of the Council of Chambers, he's also president of the Great Neck Chamber. And Michelle is also a resident and a business owner in Great Neck. There is, I don't know how widespread it is, and maybe I'll let the panelists go, but there has been, Great Neck is kind of a unique situation. Great Neck is 9 villages. The main shopping district lies along Middle Neck Road. In a stretch of about 1.5 miles, there's 4 or 5 villages and the town of North Hempstead. So there is no mayor extrans to preside over this and say, okay, this is what we're going to do. And everyone has a veto there. So this has become an issue. So Michelle, I'd like to hear from Dennis what he thinks in terms of the chamber. So let's start it with Dennis, and then we'll go to Michelle about a place like Great Neck where you have, where government can work against an ultimate solution. So Dennis?
Yeah, Great Neck has right now about 6 major residential projects under construction. I think that will bring a lot to the table in terms of business for the stores. I think that groups like Michelle has formed are an absolute plus and a help to the chamber. And we need more like that, more participation, because it's not just a few people that are on the board of the chamber. We need the community, and we also need the store owners involved. And you need to get people together. And with the NCC, we hired Slovis Media to do our social media. And I'm going to talk to the Great Neck board about bringing them on board as well. And the more we get people communicating with each other, which Michelle has done, I think, a good job so far in doing things like that, we can take steps forward. We also need the cooperation of the mayors and in terms of parking and valet parking, which I battle over all the time in certain areas because people don't know where the parking is. Even though we prepare maps and do things like that, people just don't spend the time go looking them up.
Michelle, you want to tell us about your group, because this was, and I'll say this, the chamber, the Great Neck Chamber, mea culpa, I'm on the board there, but it's been a struggle because just getting agreement. Eric once came and did a presentation and said, you need to have agreement and develop a plan the way Mayor Ekstrand did. Great Neck, that hasn't happened because you have kind of the Balkans of the North Shore. Michelle, tell us about your group and what brought it about and what you're doing.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me on. About 2 months ago, Janet Asagaf, who is our leader, I guess, she just got tired, I think, of what has been going on. And I know that this is not a problem that's unique to Great Neck. I think that it's a problem that's unique to a lot of small towns, especially after COVID. A lot of stores closing, a lot of businesses closing. And she just took it upon herself one day and she posted on Facebook and asked for people who would be willing to help her start a group, very, very grassroots group, to try and revitalize Great Neck. So in a few very short weeks, we formed a group called Destination Great Neck. We had a meeting maybe a week or two after her first original Facebook post went out. And we formed a group of 10 board members. We are made up of business owners, we are made up of residents, and we are all concerned and we all just want to give Great Neck a little bit of a boost. So I run the social media part of it. I do the Instagram. By no means am I an expert on Instagram. I run it for myself. I'm on it personally. So I just kind of took over this aspect of it. And I have to say, I think that social media is definitely what is uniting all of these small businesses right now, especially because so many people are home. Even though everything has opened up a little bit more, I myself know that unfortunately, I'm more on my phone than I used to be. And people are looking for things to do, restaurants to go to, fitness studios to attend, anything you can imagine. So we have invited all of these businesses to join our Instagram page. We've invited members of the community to join the Instagram page. And what we ask is very simple, for people just to tag businesses that they go to, business owners to tag themselves. We promote them. It's a free service. And it's very easy. They tag, we repost. And I myself have found so many great new businesses through this group in the last couple of months.
So thank you, Michelle. Richie, I want to talk to you because you were I think, one of the big accomplishments. And the IDA had not been, let's say, on the previous administration and in many other locations, hadn't been noted for doing works in downtown. It was kind of a thing where you're protecting businesses, and it can be in a number of different categories. One of the big accomplishments, I think, of the county IDA of recent during your term is what happened in Long Beach, where there was a building there for something like 10 years that hadn't been developed. So tell us about that, that how you were able to take something in the middle of a town that had frustrated people and hadn't been developed, and now it's on the way to being developed, and what was being developed there?
Yeah, well, it's the Long Beach Superblock, which had been vacant for over 40 years. When I was a kid, I used to go bowling there. I used to go on that boardwalk with my parents and play skee ball and get knishes and bowled in this area. It's been vacant for over 40 years. And there have been a number of attempts to develop it, and they were all unsuccessful. And what we did is we worked with the developer who bought the property, Engel Berman, and we worked with the community and the elected officials, someone like John Bendo, the city council president down there, Denise Ford, the county legislator, Todd Kaminsky, the state senator, and we got a consensus that we need to get something there. As a result of that, we approved that project, which is going to have hundreds of residential units, some condos, some rentals, over 10% affordable so that people could afford it. And I think that, what Anthony said before, and he's doing a great transit-oriented project in Limbrook, replacing a dilapidated motel, the Diplomat, if I remember correctly, with a cornerstone, a new project there that we helped him with and we're working cooperative with. But the point that we made in Long Beach is, and I think you made a good point before, Anthony, is, build it and they'll come. If you want to get people shopping in I love Long Beach, and I love many of the villages. Mayor Extra and I was having a dinner last night with a good friend of ours, Chuck Fischillo, former state senator, and he was talking about the library in downtown Farmingdale. You go to Long Beach. Long Beach has a great downtown, but you need people who are living there, who are going to shop there, who can not just get off the train, but people who are living there. And the fact is that as a result of this project, which couldn't have been done without IDA assistance, there are going to be thousands of people newly living in the city of Long Beach in the next few years. And those are the people that are going to go into Geno's, that are going to go into Swing Bellies, that are going to go into the local supermarket, the movie theater, and shop and spend dollars. And that adds money to the tax base, so that the city benefits from it, the county benefits from it, everyone benefits from it.
Richie, can I interrupt to just ask you, because that sounds great. If you say that, though, there are developments in case Manhasset, Macy's, and Brookfield properties wanted to redevelop the Macy's property in Manhasset and put in a hotel, put in an apartment, put in more retail, underground, and people were adamantly against it. And in many cases, and this crops up from time to time, they say more people is bad. Our schools can't handle it. Our roads can't handle it. We don't want to be Queens. You're going to turn us into New York City. And I see Mayor Ekstrom nodding his head. So I'm going to let you answer first how you handled it, and then I'll let Mayor Ekstrom answer.
And I got to jump on this too after also.
Okay,
so,
and then we'll let Eric, but we hear this time and again. They want to do a 7-Eleven on Plandome Road in Manhasset, and they booted it out because it would be
and I'm aware of that Macy's project didn't go off the ground, although I don't think it's over yet. I think the most important thing is to work with the community and the local elected officials. I think the problem with the IDA in the past has been not just a misunderstanding of what we do or what we can and can't do, but it kind of basically said, you're going to get the super block, you're going to get, a project here, and you shouldn't be telling mayors like Mayor Ekstrand what they have to accept. What you have to do is you have to put your arm around Mayor Ekstrand and say, what can we do in Farmingdale? What can we do in Limbrook to work with elected officials? And you can't have a tin ear. If you work with local officials and they join you in selling something, it more than likely is going to happen. And one of the things that when Laura Curran, who I knew before she became county executive, asked me to do the IDA, she said the most important point is the more we develop, in smartly, the more we don't have to raise property taxes because we get revenues to stabilize the tax base. So I think it's a combination of working with the community leaders, the residents. Not everyone is going to be for everything. It's impossible. You want to give $1 million to someone, one of those people are going to be against it for some reason. But most people, I think, recognize today that sustained but smart growth. Eric knows that term well. Is important right now. Otherwise, the property taxes are going to continue to go up and strangle Long Island. So the other thing I think that is critically important is there is a misnomer out there, Steve, and that is that, the IDA lowers taxes for, Bartone in Limbrook or the super block or whatever it is, and we have to pay the difference. It's actually not true. The IDA never lowers taxes. What we do is we give tax incentives in the form of payments in lieu of taxes, where, you know, you take a property like the super block, right? It's been vacant for 40 years. So the amount of money that the city of Long Beach is getting is very limited because it's vacant property. All of a sudden now you're building hundreds of condominiums and rental units over there. It's going to pay more in taxes. So in fact, the community doesn't lose, they gain. And I think that's a critical component. I don't think we should be lowering taxes for anyone, but giving incentives. And Anthony, you could say this better than anyone here. The bottom line is, yeah, you know what? We don't have to help. But if we didn't, for instance, help Anthony in Limbrook with what he's doing, it's a great project, or the super block, he wouldn't be building it. And that means a loss of revenue to the great village of Limbrook, and you know, ultimately hurts the taxpayers. So this is a thing that we all have to work together to educate people. But the most important thing, Steve, and I think Ralph would agree with this too, you have to work with people. People don't want to get things forced down their throat, all right? And it's a partnership. And I'm a big believer in partnership. And that's how I think the IDA can be successful.
Yeah, we did a
Mayor,
project
Mayor,
in Great Neck, Avalon Bay, and there was a
Okay.
big pilot payment up front, and it's 192 units, and it's been very successful.
Okay, Mayor Ekstrand.
Well, here, I can,
You were, to the people who say, we don't want more people, you're gonna turn it into Queens. We already have too much traffic. We just incidentally, we had a project in Roslyn, the village of Roslyn, where it was one of the transit-oriented, by the train station, dilapidated buildings. The school board opposed it, saying that they couldn't handle more children, and the estimate for the number was 6 more. So, but that's how people feel, and they were not. Certainly, the president of the school board was not alone. So, how do you respond to that?
well, first we give them the facts. We have 300 new dwellings in the village of Farmingdale, and the school board has attested it brought in 22 students across the board. 300 dwellings, 22 students across the board. The school district could easily handle more. They could handle a big factor of 22 students across the board. But so that's totally not true. We backed it up. The Long Island Regional Planning Council, with the help of County Executive Laura Curran, gave a grant through forward planning for the village of Farmingdale, and they did a extensive study on infrastructure, on school districts, on the growth, the traffic patterns, the parking. And what it did is it proves that transit-oriented development works in Nassau County. Everything that the people against it were saying were scared. They were just scared and afraid of change. Unfortunately, people don't like change. It's just human nature. But this study, I assume it's open to the public. It was a Nassau County granted study. It should get out there a little bit more. But let me just talk on pilots, because as mayor, you become you won't believe all the little details you find out. First of all, pilots never go backwards. Anthony's first development was paying $21,000 in taxes on several acres of desolate warehouse industry. At the end of 20 years, I can't speak for the town or the village or Nassau County. I can only speak for the village. So in 20 years, it goes from 21,000 to 190,000. 100, and yeah, you heard me, $190,000 from 21. Can you tell me where you can put $21,000 and get a return to 190 compounded over a 20-year period? People are afraid of pilots. They don't understand them. I'm sure we could have a whole exercise on trying to get, it's not a break. It is not it's a payment in lieu of taxes. They're still paying the municipality money. So there's a plug for my good friend there.
Okay, Eric?
Yeah, so I want to, I think Richie nailed it early when we talk about community input. You know, the development community really needs to work collaboratively with the public, and in some old school developers don't know how to do that, or they don't want to do that, or they send certain attorneys out to deal with it, whatever. There's a new day, there's new developers out there. So that the good news is that's happening. And I think I want to cut against the narrative that says everybody on Long Island's NIMBY. 122 downtown projects had public hearings in the last 9 years. 110 of them had more community support than opponents at the hearing. 118 of those 122 were approved. So when we talk about downtown projects, small, medium, and even large scale, they get approved with community support. Now, you talk about Manhasset, we got to differentiate between large scale projects that aren't downtowns or Sears and Hicksville, the Seritage or whatever they're trying to call it. Long Islanders didn't sign up for multifamily housing on every piece of retail land that isn't performing well now. You know, I know there's regional planners out there from Manhattan who will come in and say every single parking lot needs to be 500 units of housing. You know, the folks haven't signed up for that. So, and maybe in some cases that makes sense, but you gotta plan with people on that. So that's the second thing. Third thing I'd say, the hyperlocal efforts, and I see Michelle on here, glad to meet her. That's really what's driving it. Civics, chambers, that's driving, and community-minded developers and mayors like Ralph are kind of leading the way from the bottom up. And regional planning and top-down stuff is what is really causing the conflict, because there's no trust. On the bottom, folks can still trust each other. And I'll end with this last point. What works related to trust in media and communications and what doesn't. Social media is great for let's all rally and support shop local, or let's all get foods to the food pantry this week, or let's all do this event. Great. And there's something like the nuance of whether there should be a 3-story building or a 4-story building, or there should be this percentage of affordable or not, or there should be this type of use or not. And there has to be dialogue back and forth, and people have to sort out facts. Social media is an awful medium to communicate. And in fact, where the bulk of the approvals have come has been when social media was marginalized and real relationships with real people won the day. And even to your point in Roslyn, Stephen, I know more village residents supported that project, and it was more word of mouth than it was a social media campaign. And you guys approved it, you know, in that village recently. And in Hicksville, you know, we won by the train station, a new zoning code in the town of the Bay, of all places, because we had a 10-year effort with local residents, real human beings, real people, and the people fighting it were strange social media people who didn't even live in town. You know, I mean, so yeah, you say, who are these people? Strange people in their pajamas at 2 a.m, you know, with different substance saying strange things, you know. So I think we need to be strategic in the process at which, and even how we talk about this stuff, because I'm not going to carry an assumption that says everybody's against everything. That's not true anymore.
So, Michelle, you're doing a grassroots effort.
It's a series of grassroots efforts all over the island. I mean, you know, that's really what's winning.
What's the reaction? You have residents in your group. Maybe that's kind of a novel idea, and maybe something that chambers could incorporate in other places. Is the combination. How do you find that relationship part where you have people that they're business people and then you got residents? are you able to work together, or is that, are there disagreements?
Well, I feel so far that our social media platform has been kind of like a town meeting. I feel like people come together, even our Facebook group, it's become more of a town meeting. We try not to get too political in things that have to do with local government, especially. We're basically just trying to revive the businesses on a superficial level. We're not going and asking people how they feel about zoning and things like that. That's not what we're about. We just want to get the businesses that are in our towns a little bit more exposure. We're doing it with a little bit of a fun flavor. That's it. It's I think what we're doing is a little different than maybe other social media that you've seen. I apologize for my dog in the background. Yeah, I think that it has started a conversation. I'm a member of the community, so I'm always talking to people, and people know about us. They know about us and they're taking notice. And people even text me, ask me, where should I go for this? I'm looking for a doctor. I'm looking for a hair salon. I'm looking for a restaurant. So I do feel that it is getting a conversation going between our group. And we have a meet and greet this Sunday in one of our beautiful parks where people can come and just kind of meet the business owners, meet each other. We're going to be doing some raffles, just to get that sense of community back together.
I just want to add in, this seems to be having, at least in this area, other people who are doing it in Port Washington. The Port Washington bid in the chamber have come up with an app that says try Port first, that they're in the process of introducing. I thought it's a terrific app. Obviously, you've got to get people to participate, but it lists every business by category. You could look it up. And, the question, like any other business, it's kind of a startup business. You want to get people to use it, but here is another way that people can communicate. You can kind of advertise a little by putting things on the top. I know other ways to advertise. Talk to me later if you'd like more information.
I have.
there is that going on with the in Port Washington, which is less of a grassroots, more chamber bid, but that's something else where they're trying to promote the businesses, shopping places, how to shop local. Let me jump to Anthony on something, and that is in terms of the future of, is there a future for brick and mortar stores? What do you foresee businesses looking like? Are there changes coming in terms of the mix of businesses, what they're building? I know we're talking about that mixed use that you want to see more. But is there anything else in the nature of the mix of businesses that communities ought to be looking about attracting that you think is successful? I have an idea that I will only bring up later that we've discussed earlier about a different type of retail, but we'll let Mayor Extra comment on that later. But for now, Anthony, could you are there going to be changes in the design or how people are looking to bring in customers?
Well, yeah, I think there's no question there'll be change, but changes here. And Eric, I think, hit it right on the head. If you look at the downtowns, and a lot of people are struggling, a lot of businesses are struggling. I don't want to downplay that, but the downtowns seem to be faring better than when you're sitting on a retail island in the middle of a major roadway. So I guess the best way to describe it is you look at before Mayor Ekstrom took office in Farmingdale, there were 23 vacant stores in Farmingdale. After just a little bit of revitalization efforts, a little bit of TOD work, it went down to, I think what, Ralph, 2?
One.
One. So I think that's it. And one of the problems, Stephen, especially in Farmingdale, we felt somewhat pioneering. Eric started the visioning process in 05, 06. It wasn't really brick and mortar. So we were looking to other areas of the country, New Jersey and other areas where this type of revitalization existed. Long Islanders don't really like hearing that. We don't really want to care about what New Jersey's doing. We think that's some other country. So when it was speculation, it was difficult for everybody to get their arms around. But now it's real. It's bricks and mortar. Now it's empirical data. People can see it, walk down the street, and now it's a little easier for everybody to embrace. So is it changing? Yes, but change has been occurring. This panel is specific to downtown. So I think from a downtown point of view, as long as other downtowns take the strides that Farmingdale, Mineola, Patchogue, now Westbury, Lynbrook, all these communities are getting behind, you will see the downtowns not only come back, but thrive. I mean, a good example is in Farmingdale, we had a restaurateur come in who opened up a restaurant called Best Buy. Within a year, before you know it, now he's opened a steakhouse right across the street, Harley's. Then he buys another restaurant down the street, which the former Ubaldo's, he's opening a place there. That the growth is infectious. Much like blight can be infectious, growth is also infectious. Revitalization is infectious. It's a palpable energy that you feel in the downtown when you walk down it. So it is changing. It has been changing, but specific to downtown, I believe it's changing for the better.
Right.
And notwithstanding Amazon and the incredible growth of Amazon and taking business away from other people, is that you still think that they're able to succeed and thrive?
Yeah, I think there's no question. And here's what I'd like to say, and it dovetails into one of the comments you made earlier, Stephen. When you touch certain nerves here on Long Island, when you mention traffic, there's a nerve there. You could say that in any forum, and people are all going to say, oh yeah, traffic on Long Island, oh my God. That doesn't mean, I always say this, but it doesn't mean we turn off the lights and go to bed and just call it a day. Say, oh, well, that's it. There was traffic on Long Island, nothing else we could do. It just means you reinvent how you do it. That's why we're focused on transit-oriented development. We're encouraging people to use mass transit to ease the burden of traffic. It's not going to go away, but it eases it. So the same thing rings true for retail. It's going to be extremely difficult to compete with an Amazon. If you're a big box retailer, sure, it's going to be. But if you're a downtown business, like Ralph said, when somebody comes home and you're living community and you walk out your front door and you can go next door and you can get something to eat, you could buy a pair of sneakers, or you could do those things in a very small, hyper-local area, that will prevail. And that will only get stronger. Online shopping is here to stay, but that doesn't mean we just say, all right, that's it, call it a day. It means we have to evolve with it.
Yeah, Steve, I think also what we're noting is the configuration of businesses will change. The pickup and delivery and all that's going on right now is going to stay with us, and it probably will account for a good percentage of their business when they reopen and have customers coming back in for dinner and so on and so forth. I think the takeout business is going to continue to thrive. I agree with Eric and what he said before. Social media is good to get people together and get a dialogue going. But when it comes to getting the money into the register and working with Richard and working with Eric and all the other groups in the Nassau Council of Chambers, we found that the joint chamber networking events, which Steve, you know very well, has worked terrifically on the North Shore. We had tremendous success. We had 100, 130 people at every event, and we got people from Port Washington, Roslyn, New Hyde Park to come to Great Neck and vice versa. So everybody's patronizing everybody else's businesses, which is the function of the Chamber of Commerce's bringing everybody together.
Let me ask too, in terms of difficulty, one of the things that I've heard, and we have Mayor Extran here, and we have Richie Kessel, so representing government, and Dennis does a little bit of work himself. But one of the issues is the zoning code. One of the difficulties that we had heard for being a developer is the fact that you have in Nassau County, 64 villages, 3 towns, 2 cities, county, and each of them has their own zoning code. And in some cases, I'm going to the village. And then if I'm getting a fire inspection or I think a food inspection, Nassau County has to do it. And Nassau County doesn't talk to the village, and the timing is different. And we know time is money with the development. So is that still the case? Maybe I'll ask Anthony, are you finding that to be an issue in Nassau County? Is the fact that nobody has the same zoning code. And in some cases, you need two approvals to boot. So you never know what you're coming into and what the code allows. So then you have to go and research it, do it, and then apply it. You can't do a cookie cutter approach. If I was a Starbucks, I might be, and I wanted to open up a bunch of Starbucks, I'm subject to different zoning rules in those places. Is that a deterrent for you?
Well, there's absolutely no question, but the flip side of that is I have to applaud the current county government, County Executive Laura Curran and Richie, for there's something that many people on this panel may not, the term might be foreign to them. In my world, it's like a root canal, is a term called 239F. And what that means is that you have concurrent review between the county and the governing body. And in the past, that could take upwards of a year for the dual review, just that one step. So I have to applaud the county executive that in her tenure during her first term, that nobody took this on. She took it on, and it's evolving. And I believe now the timing is down to what, Richie, like 6 weeks or something like that. So I mean, that's an extraordinary turn of course, turning the Titanic. So county government, the current administration is sensitive to what's going on, does recognize it, and is trying for the first time in a long time to mend some of those problems. They do exist. It is very difficult. There are a number of jurisdictions. I won't even discuss fire marshal review on this panel, but there's that as well. Look at Eric. I'm not even going to go there. But I will say that our elected officials are aware of it. They're improving it. It is actually really improving. A lot of people talk, but it is improving. It is difficult, but I think we're moving in the right direction where people are recognizing it and trying to make the process less difficult.
Let me just follow up because you said you didn't want to speak about it, so of course I'll bring it up. But we had a panel a couple of years ago, and Rich Nicolello was there, and he acknowledged that there weren't enough fire inspectors, that you needed this, but that there's a delay because the county hadn't hired them. Richie, I'll also let you speak to this as well, but has that gotten better? Are there enough fire inspectors so that you don't have to wait to get the inspection so that you can move ahead?
Well, I'll answer before, and then Richie could speak on it because I know they're trying to improve it. I've never been accused of not being candid, and I won't start now. No, it is still a flawed system at the fire marshal's office. I believe Richie and the county exec are acutely aware of it. They do need more fire marshals. There's no question about that. The county's a big place. And in Nassau County, the fire marshal oversees every project and ultimately has final say on whether a building opens or does not. So they do need more marshals. There's no question. But, and I know everybody's aware of it, but as of late, in my experience, that we still haven't seen much movement there.
Okay, Richie?
Well, I agree. I mean, I think we all know that we need to beef up the fire marshal's office and the things that they do. One of the, and you know, you just don't see it on Long Island. You see it in the city too. And it's not just the fire marshals. It's, you know, getting an electric, like, I don't want to mention utility names. I used to run a couple of them, but getting them, you know, to install service, put in a meter. There are a lot of frustrations. And one of the things that I think is changed is that Laura Curran has deputized the IDA to try to, wade through some of these problems, so that if we're working on a particular project and there is a problem with a fire marshal or utility connecting service, we try to expedite it and follow through on it. I think that's an important point too, and that's you got to follow through. It's very easy to approve or reject something, but after you particularly approve something, you've got to follow through. You've got to make sure, as an example, if they're going to construct a new building or a business, and there was a commitment to hire union labor and local people. And I think that's very important, especially now that we work very closely with Matt Arasich in the building trades. These people need jobs right now, and promises are not enough. Commitments need to be kept. If someone is having a problem with a fire marshal, we'll call them. We're not afraid. We're not shy. So I think that follow through is critically important. And we have to keep working and making government better and more efficient. One of the things that is useful, and I know Eric has been really helpful here, is that because of the Recovery Act that was just passed by the President and Congress, Nassau County is going to receive almost $400 million over the next 2 years. And County Executive Curran has asked me and my good friend Stu Rabinowitz, who's the president of Hofstra, to work with an economic advisory council, which she formed last year when COVID first hit, to try to recommend, where should we put that money to make the most good. And the priority that she outlined and that we're working on is how do we use some of that money to help small businesses. And I know that Eric is working with me and Dennis and a number of people to try to see, how can we directly help small businesses and downtowns? And maybe one of them is to hire additional staffing at places like the fire marshal so we can get these approvals quicker. Because I know that a lot of businesses get very frustrated by that. So I think there's, we've got, and I won't take much longer here, but we've got a very unique opportunity right now. We're going to get $200 million this year and another almost $200 million next year. And, how do we spend that money wisely to revitalize our downtowns? And, it's not something we should do by fiat. It's something that we should do by including others like Vision Long Island, Eric's group, like the county legislature. I had, a good talk with Rich Nicolello, is a great presiding officer of the legislature, about how we work on a bipartisan basis to get things done in various downtowns. And by the way, Steve, it doesn't have to be general. It could be specific. Where are some of the downtowns that we can help? You've got mayors like Mayor Ekstrom, Cavallero and Westbury, and others, Allen Beach and Limbrook. And, how can we help your downtown specifically right now and spend some of these funds to grow these downtowns and revitalize them? And I think over the next few months and years, that has got to be a number one priority. And
I'm gonna promote in a second Janet Esikoff. Michelle had to leave us, so we're going to promote Janet. So I'm giving Rose our the okay to go ahead. But I have one thing for downtowns. The only place, hi Janet, the only place in Nassau County or in the areas that we are, where there are parking meters, are downtowns. There is an issue with parking in all the downtowns, and the local villages, small villages, don't have the money to put put up the parking lots. The other thing is, a lot of the villages are reliant on parking meters for their revenue. Not only the meters, but the fines that people get for meters. And you don't have to be a great psychologist to understand that if you get a ticket shopping at a location, you're less apt to come back. Downtowns are the only place that have these parking meters and that require it. Shopping malls don't have it. Roosevelt Field doesn't have it. The Americana doesn't have it. None of the locations along Miracle Mile, this is my area where I'm most familiar. If you go down Northern Boulevard, there's parking in the back. If you go into Great Neck, if you go into Port Washington, if you go into Roslyn, into the villages, there's parking meters and parking tickets. So is that not an area that really should be looked at as being, seems counterproductive, where people have to put money in the meter, oftentimes into meters that, or on occasion that don't work or broken, and then on occasion that you're going to get a ticket.
I would like to speak.
I just say one thing. I think you're hitting on a really good point. And I'd like, we have to do it now. I'd like to, get your thoughts and the thoughts of the panel and Eric, maybe, because Eric is working with us. How can we spend some of that money to alleviate that problem? By the way, I agree with you. I was in Great Neck a couple of weeks ago. I shopped at Poultry Mart, love Poultry Mart. I put my money in the meter on Middle Neck Road. But, maybe there's a way for us to help some of the downtowns in terms of making up for the revenues. I remember a few years ago, the village of Huntington, Suffolk County, but a great place. And Frank Petrone was the supervisor there. They waived parking fees during the holiday season. But as you just pointed out, that's a revenue hit to the village or to the town, wherever it is. So maybe there's a way to work on working with the downtowns for certain periods of time during the year where we can make up that funding and waive parking. And that's something that I'd like to look at with you, Steve, and Eric, and some of the other people on the Zoom. That's a great idea.
I'm with you, Richie, 100%.
Well, I can tell you right now, we've been in the 13 years I've been in Farmingdale, in my position, it is, we've done our parking lots. It's ran us $9 million to redo our parking lots in the last 9 years, $9 million. If I don't have revenue, where do you think I get the revenue from? I have to pay off the bonds. I can't raise taxes that high a percentage. So right now, unless somebody gives us money, and I do get grant money, I get a lot of grant money from Nassau County. I've gotten grant money from our 2 state senators, but it's still $9 million in 9 years to redo 6 parking lots. If I don't have parking fees, I could not. Plus, I have to maintain them. The street lights got to be replaced. Street sweepers. I just got a brand new street sweeper. They're $300,000. Unless we get funding, like Richie just said, we constantly have to charge for parking. That's just the way of life.
There's another way to do this. There's another way to do it. If we had parking spaces in the railroad, parking spaces that the employees could use from the stores, they wouldn't be taking up those spaces in front of the stores, and you wouldn't need the meters. People would be in and out as they shop. Right now, we have people parking on the street because they're taking the train or they work in a certain place, and they're tying up the spaces that customers would normally use. So we have to reallocate and reuse and probably go underground in various areas and put below ground parking in, which does not affect the looks of an area, and that might be a solution. We have to restructure what we do in parking in the downtowns.
I just think you're competing against shopping malls in Northern Boulevard, the strip centers. You're competing with the Americana. And
See, I'm gonna disagree with you, Steve. You're not,
Different crowd.
because restaurants and bars are what are in downtowns.
Right.
Pure shopping experience are either online or a discount big box, or the higher end Americanas and things of that nature. Downtowns aren't the retail of old. They are experiential retail of certain types. There are some destination type things, but people go to downtown for an experience. And look, I'm all for parking management solutions. I'm all for creativity. I'm all for, different hours and different types of meters and this and that. But if you've got a parking problem, that's a good problem to have. I know main streets, some of them in Suffolk County, some that haven't done much planning, most of them that aren't in villages, that don't have a parking problem. And they're miserable because they want a parking problem. They want people to be there. And if you've got a downtown where folks want to be, that's a good thing. Now, I get it. The Long Island Railroad does dominate, or at least maybe not now, but has. And there's been some mismanagement in how the Long Island Railroad has used their impact, shall we say, and that maybe has been clumsily handled. So we could put that aside. But as far as raw management of parking, and we'll look to Ralph, but there's another bunch of mayors. I think Peter Cavallero has done a fantastic job in Westbury. Where they are, they need revenue. See, main streets need to be managed. Malls have managers. Main streets need to be managed, and they need revenue to do it. And the state is certainly, up against the state takes every resource. I mean, even the marijuana law, every resource.
Well,
So
it would be nice if municipalities could run their business districts the same way that shopping centers do.
I would beg to say they do.
And if you go to, I'm down the road for Weekly Plaza, which is part of, owned by the same people as the Americana. There's a spot off to the side in the back where the employees park. There is designated spots for that, so you don't have it. Let me go to Janet. And
So I wanted to speak about the parking issue. I agree with Mr. Alexander that obviously when there's a lot of congestion and people wanting to park, that's a good indicator that people are shopping. But in Great Neck, we have enough parking, from what I understand. The parking garages have adequate space for all the cars and the street parking. There appears to be parking available, but people don't avail themselves of it. People are lazy. They don't want to walk the few blocks. In fact, in our group, we discovered there was an article from 1983 where Mayor Gutsack identified that people were just lazy. The parking was available, but nobody wanted to walk to it. One of the issues we identified is nobody's really walking anymore. Everybody wants to park in front of where they're going, get back in their car and go home. If people could just get more used to the idea of parking in a lot and walking a few blocks, that would generate interest from passersby that there's more walking traffic in town. Great Neck doesn't have the same flavor it used to of people walking and window shopping. It's really lost. And I'm hoping we can recapture that. One of our initiatives with Destination Great Neck is beautifying the windows and trying to have something attractive to look at, a more uniformity with the signage and making windows beautiful again so people can do a little bit of window shopping and maybe making the walking experience a little bit more enjoyable. And the traffic cops in Great Neck, the ticket writers, are very good at what they do. I mean, you're 5 minutes late, they're out writing a ticket. They're good at it. But I do agree that the revenue might be an issue, and maybe there could be an offset to the revenue some other way to recoup those dollars if we do some kind of voucher or buyback of a ticket or some type of forgiveness of a ticket.
one of the issues that I think, go ahead, Anthony.
I just wanted to jump on what Janet's saying, and it's funny because I spoke on a panel once and I said that very thing. I said, a Long Islander get into a physical altercation to park the car right in front of the train tracks, but then a walk 10 blocks in Manhattan to get to their office. So it's always sort of ironic. But that said, there are ways to do this. And in point of fact, there's an RFQ out right now that we're replying on in Riverhead where they're saying, look, we get it. We're not very good at managing our parking, right? Just for the same reasons that Ralph's mentioning. It's very costly. There's no worse use of space than a sea of asphalt where tumbleweeds are blowing through. So let's be smart and let's have a public-private partnership where, in this particular case, they're offering their parking lot at their train for a developer to come in and develop it, replace and add more parking. The developer will maintain it, manage it, shared parking solutions, which we've all heard about, which is, because residents have an inverse relationship with retail on how they park and drive, et cetera. So there are ways to do it. You could have a partnership where the municipality partners with the development community and says, look, we have this parking lot here with 200 spaces. We'd like to have 300, but we stink at maintaining it. You guys maintain it. Let's enter into an agreement that runs in perpetuity, and you could develop above it. Now, but what comes in tow with that, by the way, is the comment you made earlier. I like to kind of always bring it back to circle on Queens and whatnot. I always chuckle at that because the buildings we're building here on Long Island are 3 and 4 stories. Guys, that's not bigger than a house. So let's knock it off with the Queens nonsense. But that said, if you're going to do these structured parking solutions with mixed use, with residential or whatever above, there has to be certain height considerations. So now, whereas we're going 3 and 4 stories, well, we might have to go 4 or 5. So we could park the 200 or 300 cars for the municipality with a shared solution, and then build above it, and take that burden off the municipality hand. And by the way, introduce that property back onto the tax rolls.
Okay. The other thing, if you're looking for ideas, which is the parking meters themselves. In some areas, they're up to date in terms of the technology. In others, they're not, and they tend to break. And then the problem becomes with a small village, they don't have the financial means to do that. And they may not also, then they also have to go out by having 64 municipalities. That's 64 municipalities that hire a consultant to do that. Wouldn't that be better done if this was more done centrally? So that you wouldn't have, at least in terms of the expense, the people who study and maybe even purchase parking meters, making sure that they're the most up to date and easiest to use, where you can use it with an app on your phone and you don't have to leave the restaurant when you're running late and just add the expense when it's in there. I'll leave that to Richie, but so let's go back.
Steve, I just want to jump in. I would caution any conversation about central control solutions. I think we have the hardest time now to get people to trust, and trust is best built on the local level. And I know one of your questions earlier was, hey, we have all these smaller municipalities. That's the reason why we have progress. Because if it was left to the bigger governments, and this is not about the county, because the county doesn't have land use control, and Richie's doing a phenomenal job. We're talking about as far as the bigger towns. The bigger towns on Long Island have done the least. The smallest villages have done the most. So we really want to see, the diversity is the strength. Having these and these local communities. Great Neck is not Greenport. Valley Stream is not Patchogue. These are different communities with different flavors and experiences, and they have the right to control that. They're gonna have different parking solutions. I know folks in Bay Shore hate meters. I know folks, they don't want the muni meters. Some downtowns love them, and there's all different takes on this thing. So I just let the locals have all the tools in their toolbox. That'd be my
Eric
suggestion.
is very right. Every community is very different, has a unique set of problems, and has to be approached in a very unique fashion.
Okay, so Richie, just one other thing is to ask you is the amount of money that we're now looking at, and you're looking at this. So what did you say the amount of money that businesses could be seeing? How much of that 400 million that's coming, what part of that is going to go towards local business, the local business community? And you're looking for answers. What should the local business community, are you looking for input from people to make suggestions of how to spend that money?
Yeah, absolutely. A year ago when we first got into COVID, the county executive created this economic advisory council to work with small businesses, and we developed a lot of programs. Loans for small businesses, grants, restaurant grants, PPE, all of these things. We're gonna get from the federal government under the Recovery Act that was recently passed, approximately $400 million over the next 2 years. And what the county executive did was she came back to this Economic Advisory Council and said, I want to convene you. We had our first meeting last week, and we want your ideas as to how to spend the money. And she gave us a list of priorities, and one of them was how to help small businesses in downtowns. And so the IDA and myself and Evelyn Simmons, who does a great job on as the economic development deputy county executive, convened a small group of people. Dennis and Eric are on that group, and we are going to be making recommendations as to some of the things that we can spend the money on. Ultimately, the decision will rest with the county executive and the county legislature, both sides, the majority and the minority. And I will say happily that I've spoken with both sides, and they're willing to work together on a nonpartisan way to figure out how we utilize this money. But in answer to the question, we haven't really determined yet. First of all, we need to know what the rules are, what we can spend the money on and can't. And those rules and guidelines have not yet been published. We're hoping in the next few weeks to get them. But I will tell you, based upon my conversations with Laura Curran and Evelyn and her team, that a lot of that money is going to be directed to helping small businesses. Sure, there are going to be grand ideas, transportation, parks, a lot of things, that roads that we need work on. But I can tell you that the administration and the county legislature. I had a great talk with Rich Nicolello the other day. We're all very dedicated to spending some of these resources to help downtowns and small businesses. And I think you're going to see spending. This isn't something that's years away, Steve. I think you're going to see money being spent in a few months as we go forward. It has to be spent wisely and with public input.
Okay, well, I want to thank you. I had one question. I had one issue that I wanted to take up to end our event, and we're going to direct it. We'll start with Mayor Ekstrand, and anyone who wants to respond to the mayor can do so, which is at the end of 2022, it will be legal to have marijuana dispensaries in New York. Is that the way? Is that a way? Is that something that we can anticipate appearing in our downtown districts in the future? Mayor?
Well, speaking for myself, and as many of you know, myself and Dennis were on Laura Curran's task force 2 years ago and recommended the county to opt out, which they could at that time. But my team has built up Farmingdale in the past 10 years to a phenomenal eatery place. You come to Farmingdale, we have 1,000 outdoor seats for you to eat. We feel that it would be detrimental to our downtown. As you know from the new law, anywhere you smoke a cigarette, you're allowed to smoke a joint. So there is nothing that kills the meal or the appetite more than 2 or 3 people walking down the street smoking skunk weed and interrupting the dinner. That would be perfectly legal. So no, we are not looking to promote this in our downtown. I consider it blood money. The trade-off is blood money. They're paying us to allow this to happen. We are looking at ways to make local laws so they can't smoke marijuana and interfere with our outdoor dining, interfere with our music festivals, which we get anywhere from 6,000 to 10,000 people to our music festivals we have. Unfortunately, we haven't had them in the past year, and again, probably not again this year. but the smell of the marijuana is detrimental to our downtown businesses. And I'll just leave it to the next person.
All right, anyone would like to comment about the possibility of marijuana dispensaries in parts of Nassau County?
I can speak about Great Neck. I mean, Great Neck, it's hard to get even a permit to play some music or to have late nights. Our restaurants and stores close by 10, 11 o'clock. Great Neck is very conservative, all of its villages. I would be very surprised if there was any allowance of dispensary or retail or even a head shop. We don't have a CBD store. Great Neck is very, very conservative. And that's a limitation and a strength. It has helped us through hard times. It's very much the character of many of our different ethnic groups and different groups, but I don't see marijuana coming to Great Neck.
All right, we're not going to do that.
Steve, I'm going to jump in since I was on the task force. There's 49 chambers and each chamber had a different opinion. The vote was against it. Judy Bosworth was against it in town of North Hempstead. I think there are a number of people that were for it. And in some places, it'll have to be regulated very carefully, kept away from the children. And I think this is going to be an issue that involves a good amount of detailed discussion to find out where it's allowed, where it's appropriate, where it's not appropriate, and what groups don't want it and what groups do want it. So I think it's open to a strong dialogue amongst the 49 chambers and all the communities.
I'm gonna suggest one thing as that
we weighed in with our Main Street Alliance members. We got to 70 of them, and let's be clear. Nobody was saying it shouldn't be decriminalized and that people should be going, with fines and going to prison for these types of offenses. So that was clear. But having said that, I think through coronavirus, people have been going through so many struggles and changes. To have this kind of overlaid on them from the state without real clear knowledge of what the liabilities are for businesses is a real challenge. Nobody wants their downtown to be Amsterdam also. We heard a lot of that. And I think, lastly, however this was negotiated, the local governments don't get enough of the resources. The state gets the bulk. So that's what we heard.
Okay. Well, I want to, I guess we're not ending on a high note. That was going to give me, if we were in favor of it. I was going to say that we're going to ending on a high note, but I guess we can't. But I think, notwithstanding not ending on a high note, I would very much like to thank our panelists for a terrific discussion. Richard Kessel, it's easy to fall into that, my apologies. Eric Alexander, Anthony Bartone, Ralph Ekstrom, and Dennis Grossman, Janet Essigoff, and Michelle Tabaroki also joining us. We appreciate that. I would also, again, like to thank Northwell Health and Nassau County Local Economic Assistance Corporation for sponsoring this evening's discussion and others. For those who are unable to watch today, a recording of the debate can be found, and you can tell your friends and colleagues. It'll be on our website with a link to our YouTube channel. You can go to our YouTube channel. You can go to our Facebook page. A story about this evening will be in the 6 Blank Slate newspapers next week. I hope all our attendees will also support us by subscribing to the award-winning newspaper of your newspaper, of your community. Newspapers face some of the same challenges as downtown shopping districts. And our fortunes are very much tied to the success of those downtown districts. I hope you will also join us on Thursday, May 20th, when I sit down with Adam Haber, Jerry Kremer, George Marlin, and Karen Rubin, 4 of Blank Slate Media's columnists, to discuss the issues of the day in what we should expect to be a very lively discussion. So again, thank you for our panelists. Thank you for our attendees for making this a terrific discussion. And I hope we get to continue that in the future. And some of these, it's good to hear a very optimistic picture of what's going forward. So thank you very much for sharing that with me.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Okay. So long and thanks again.